Hey everybody, it's Cass and Court TV. It's your girl, Miss Public Info. Good Monday afternoon. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope everybody had a great week and hope you stayed a little bit cool this weekend. It was hot out here in Southern California, LA. It was burning, steaming, boiling, doing all the things. It was doing all the things, but we made it. We're back for a fresh new week and we're here for fresh new mercies. Fresh new mercies. I don't do a whole lot of, you know, uh church language here, but I sometimes I do because I am a woman of faith and it's brand new mercies. That's all we can ask for. And thank you, Lord, for that. Okay, now on to today's topics. Sean Combs. So let's get into this. Last week or last Friday, last Thursday, actually, sorry guys. Last Thursday, I talked about how Sean Diddy Combs is surprisingly, bizarrely hoping to turn into some sort of uh, domestic abuse counselor amid all of these sorts allegations and the convictions that he's under right now, awaiting sentencing on October 3rd. And his attorneys at the time, I think it was Miss Shapiro, Miss Ashley Shapiro, who suggested that Sean Combs, she had an exclusive with Business Insider. She suggested that Sean Combs was looking forward to possibly becoming a domestic violence or domestic abuse counselor, helping children, though his children actually are facing some allegations of their own, helping children, helping people, helping deter people from getting into these sorts of things. Of course, Gas and Court TV, our top, criticism was that Sean Combs has not been very accountable for his actions. The judge, Judge Submaranian, has said, like, hey, dude, you have not met your burden as it relates to sort of convincing the court that you are doing what you can to sort of subvert or, you know, change from your wicked ways, that is. And Sean Combs is saying, well, I don't have any wicked ways. I'm not violent. I'm not this. I'm not that. Essentially, I was provoked into these actions, Your Honor. So this is not really who I am. I was provoked into violence by Miss Ventura, by Miss Jane Doe, aka Daphne Joy, and flatly denying hanging one of the young ladies over the balcony, flatly denying the Kid Cudi incident. So therefore, he's saying it's not me, but the same person wants to actually become a domestic abuse advisor, counselor. This is bizarre. We think it's bizarre, but also his accusers thinks that it is bizarre as well. Now, Rolling Stone is actually Rolling Stone is actually reporting that Vince Ventura, Cassie Ventura's attorney, actually made his own comments. Douglas Wigdor, sorry guys, Douglas Wigdor, who is Cassie Ventura's attorney, made his own comments about the supposed aspirations to become a domestic abuse advisor. He went on to say, "This is utterly preposterous." Our sentiments exactly, Mr. Doug. How are you going to, in quote from Doug, how are you going to counsel someone else when you haven't done the work on yourself? Another source who was allegedly physically assaulted by him in 2010 responded with the following, in quote, "This is manipulation at its best." And, you know, Cast and Court TV said the same thing when this first came out, when Business Insider came out with this on Thursday. We also reacted in a very similar way, that this seemed very manipulative. This seemed like, just a way to sort of subvert the attention from what is actually going on right now, which is the fact that the court has said that Mr. Combs cannot even get bail because Mr. Combs is not showing that he's trying to do anything to sort of rectify his behavior. The court goes on to say that he is a flight risk, that if he were given, bail, that he would essentially be a flight risk because Mr. Combs and his attorneys understand that he's actually looking at a substantially more amount of time than he was originally facing in the beginning. And it's a lot of this, Mr. Clayton, who is the new head of this division of the DOJ, says that a lot of this has to do with the fact that formerly the guidelines were different because we weren't looking at it under the same lens of this person having the high propensity for violence. But since re-looking at this under the correct scope, the guidelines are substantially higher, that the guidelines actually require a substantially higher sentence. And I also want to remind folks that this particular conviction, the Mann Act, requires Mr. Combs to actually be remanded, to be in the custody of the Department of Justice, and because of his violence. Now, if he wasn't a violent actor in this situation, then it would not require that. But folks who are, they have a subclause within the Mann Act that says that because this person, if this person has a high propensity of violence, along with this particular conviction, that this person has, there is a mandate that this person has to be in custody. And so that is one of the other reasons that he has been in custody. Now, we've talked about the fact that the judge is not, Judge Submarinian is not uh, dealing with him in terms of that bail removal, that he's stuck there until October 3rd is a very key indicator into what that sentence may look like, that the sentence may look heftier than first, first hypothesized, that this sentence may look like a little more. Now, initially, the government was looking at anywhere from 51 to 65 months. That's into the 5 to 6 year range. But the government has come back and said, looking at substantially higher. Now, the judge could sentence Mr. Combs as it relates to both charges separately, and he could sentence to him to where he'd have to serve each sentence independently. So 5 years on one count, 5 years on the other, a total of 10 years, and he would have to do that what they would say that would be consecutively, meaning 10 years all in total. Or he could sentence him where he does 5 years for each count, and it's 5 years concurrently, meaning he would have 5 years in total, and serve that 5 year sentence alone. Now, Combs's attorneys, they're looking for 21 to 23 months, which I believe is unrealistic. I think they know that it's unrealistic, especially with these new guidelines that the government has said that they're looking at. But I think that they're sticking to their story in that regard, because they're playing the media game right now. And what they're hoping for, so says the lead attorney, Mr. Agnifilio, is they're hoping to get some home detention. Maybe that he can serve time served, but if he has additional time, that he can do that at home. Now, Judge Submarinian has been very, very, very specific about the fact that he does not trust Mr. Combs to be out of custody. He said in his answer to this last bail filing, he said in his answer that, it's not the fact that we don't know what Mr. Combs would be doing when we are watching him. Is essentially what he would do when no one is watching, what he is doing behind closed doors, the manipulation tactics, like we're sort of seeing with this whole, oh, he wants to become a domestic violence counselor sort of thing. So that is sort of what the judge is hitting on, because Combs has utilized his power, utilized manipulation tactics, utilized all of these sorts of tactics to keep people quiet in the past. And Judge Submarinian is really trying to get ahead of this and combat all of that. And so I do not think, based upon what we've heard of the answer and in these filings, that a home detention will happen for Mr. Combs. Now, let's hit on the pardon, because last week, Mr. Mark Garagos, who is the father of Tenny Garagos, and if you don't know, Mark Garagos has represented Michael Jackson, may he rest, Chris Brown. He's represented a plethora of celebrities in the past. He's a very well-known defense attorney in these Hollywood circles. And Mark Garagos does a podcast with TMZ co-founder Harvey Levin. And what they talked about on Friday was this pardon that Sean Combs is hoping to get with Mr. Donald Trump. Now, if you ask certain people in the Combs camp, Combs is not looking for a pardon. Now, Miss Nicole Westmoreland did an interview with CNN just last week, and confirmed that the Combs camp had indeed reached out to Donald Trump's camp and said, "Hey, we would like a pardon," and tried and are going through those steps to make that happen. But Agnifilio, excuse me, Mr. Agnifilio, he actually came back pretty much the next day and said, no, that is not true. We're not looking for a pardon from Donald Trump. So there's a lot of conflicting messaging going on in the Combs camp. I explained last week how, if I am doing the crisis comms or doing any sort of publicity work for Sean Combs, I am saying to every player in this game on this team, we need to wrangle all of you and get on one messaging accord because we sound crazy right now, especially if we're utilizing our legal, you know, our legal background to actually sort of act as a media blitz conduit to get our story out there. We need to make sure our story is straight. And as it relates to, what they've been saying thus far, they're all in the ethers of the of the web saying many different things. But now let's talk about Mark Garagos, because Mark Garagos, um, who again is Tenny Garagos' father. Tenny Garagos is one of the head attorneys for Sean Combs in this particular trial. He did his podcast with Harvey Levin, and he was talking about the fact that, and the podcast is called Two Angry Men, but he was talking about the fact that he believes that Donald Trump will pardon him. So let me give you the quote of what he says. He says, you want to know the truth. I think yes. When he was asked if he thinks that Donald Trump would pardon him. Do you know why? Or I'm sorry, excuse me. He was asked if he thinks that Sean Combs will actually become a Trump supporter if Sean Combs were pardoned by Donald Trump. Now, let's stick a pin in that. This is important because Donald Trump was very critical of Sean Combs just last week or 2 weeks ago when he was asked in a Newsmax interview by a political pundit about Sean Combs' pardon, and Donald Trump said at the time that it would be difficult because he's been so critical of Donald Trump in the past. They were supposed fast friends all through the 90s, and some of the 2000s, and then when Trump went on to campaign for his 2016 run, his initial run against Hillary Clinton, Sean Combs essentially, went against him. He cut all ties with him. He made various remarks, from remarks with Charlemagne the God on the Breakfast Club, talking about white men like Donald Trump need to be banished, to remarks that he made outside of that, saying that he doesn't give an F about Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump is sort of has been making the rounds, talking about the fact that it would be difficult to actually pardon Combs because of the remarks that he's made in the past. And so Greer Ghost is saying something very groundbreakingly interesting. We also need to remember that Sean Combs has also previously campaigned for yeah, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton during the Donald Trump Hillary Clinton face off. He also, campaigned for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as well. He is an ambassador for the Vote or Die campaign. Co-founder, in some circles call him a co-founder of the Vote or Die campaign. They also say, that the Vote or Die campaign is closely affiliated with the Democratic Party. So Mark Garagos is sort of making this assertion that Sean Combs, or guarantee that Sean Combs will become a Trump supporter if he were actually pardoned by Trump, is another chess piece being played in this pardon game. This is not something I would take seriously. I think this is just another game. I think both men are playing the chess game. And when I say both men, I'm talking about Sean Combs and Donald Trump. I think they're both playing the chess game, as it were, with this situation. But this team is definitely out here trying to play chess with it, but it looks a little bit like checkers because they're all sort of saying different things. You've got Mark Garagos, who is a consultant to this trial team, saying, yeah, he'd become a supporter, and he's talking about the pardon as if, they've already talked to Donald Trump's camp about this. You got Miss Westmoreland saying, yeah, we have talked to him, and you've got Agna Filio saying, no, we've not asked him for a pardon, and I've talked to Sean Combs recently, and this is not a thing. So they're all looking like checkers right now, even though they're trying to play chess. Trying to play chess. But besides that, let's get to the quotes. He says, "You don't want to know the truth." I think yes, he does become a Trump supporter. Do you know why? I don't know that it would be like a filthy oath or anything else. There's something about that fraternity of people who have been accused and have gone through the process that gives you an affinity. And it would not surprise me to hear Sean say, "I now get it. I understand it. Um, I was wrong then. I don't know if I would say he's pledging loyalty, but I think we would probably say, I now get what he went through." Now, how that what he said in terms of I now get it, I know what he went through, how that translates into some sort of political support, supporting the Republican Party versus moving away from the Democratic Party. I have no idea what that even means. That's not even what he's saying. But when you say someone, will they become a Trump supporter? That means that they would become a Republican, right? Because he's a Republican. Trump represents the Republican Party. But then Mark Garrett goes, "Are you now saying also that, or just saying that he would become a Trump supporter as a personal supporter of Donald Trump, meaning his experience of with his legal woes and things of that nature?" I think Garagos has to be very careful about putting words in Sean Combs's mouth, especially as it relates to his political affiliations. Sean Combs has been very a strong, staunch supporter of the Black community as it relates to the Black community not being supported by the Republican Party, and that Black people need to vote a certain way in order to for the survival of the Black community and Black excellence and Black wealth and things of that nature. So going by what Mark Garagos is saying right now, it's kind of like, well, I'll cast all of that to the wayside and go and become he'll cast all of that to the wayside and go and become a Trump supporter if basically it gets his fanny out of the fire. Now, morally, he might be right. We never know. But I would say, as it relates to messaging and staying true to his core audience of people, especially Black men who have been really supportive of Sean Combs during this time, he sounds a little crazy putting these words in his mouth in terms of saying, oh, well, actually, he'd become a Trump supporter versus what his actual, stance has been from the beginning, which is about Black, excellence, especially as it relates to, Black men and the welfare and their welfare and independent and um individual interests. So this will be interesting to see how this pans out. I know Garagos is thinking that he's helping with the media blitz by, putting this sort of out there in terms of like, oh, this is helping the cause. This will help, the Trump administration give him the pardon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And many people sort of feel like there is a pardon coming, but I do not think so. I do not think there is a pardon coming. I think that Donald Trump is going to leave Sean Combs high and dry, because one thing we know about Donald Trump, he is only loyal to himself and those who have been loyal to him. And Sean Combs has not, unfortunately, in this particular case, he has not demonstrated that. I mean, we see what he's doing right now in DC with this National Guard situation, taking over, federal police sort of taking over the local police departments because they feel like there is a problem with crime, though the crime numbers are lower than they've ever been. But because one of his former cabinet members was accosted and I think there was an attempt robbery or something like that, then now he is pulling out all the stops, militarizing the police, which is normally under that particular act a 48-hour thing, but he's vowing for this to be a 30-day thing to clean up the DC area, which we know in that particular metropolitan area is very much a Black populated area, telling the homeless to get out of there, we'll find you somewhere else to live, all that sort of thing. He's sort of saying we're getting all the sludge out of here is what he's been quoted as saying. So, his now the new U.S. Attorney for D.C., Jeanne Pirro, former judge, television judge, Jeanne Pirro, and Fox News pundit Jeanne Pirro, she is also vowing the same thing, saying that the youth there in the youth the juvenile laws, excuse me, juvenile laws there in DC, sort of tie her hands where she can't arrest them. She says they're too lenient. They send them to yoga class. They make them do pottery classes. She can't enforce the law there. So now, because Trump's loyalists, his cronies, people who have, worked for him and have had his back in name over the years are having issues, he is now sending in the military police. So this is what Donald Trump does for those people who are loyal to him. We're seeing that now. For Sean Combs, who hasn't been loyal to him, do you think that he's actually going to pardon him? I don't think so. Now, I personally think this is he has to think of whether or not he's going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell or he's going to pardon Sean Combs, and I think it's going to look way more looking like pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell than Sean Combs. I think Sean Combs is going to be on his own on this one. Okay, now we're going to move on. I brought a case up last week, and I want to talk about this now. This is really just a sad situation that's going on. Now, Giovanni Pelletier, he was missing since August 1st. He was a young man that had traveled from his home state of North Carolina to Florida to actually meet his father's side of the family. His father is actually incarcerated, but he did not grow up with his father's side of the family. His mother is a woman of Italian and Puerto Rican descent, and his father is an African American man. So he wanted to have, some contact with his father's family. But what we see and what we learn in this situation that happened is that, Giovanni went down there to Florida to visit the family. His mother and his mother's husband, Mr. Brown, actually went with him. But while he was there, he took a trip with the cousins that were presumably around his same age elsewhere. And it was during that trip that things went awry. 25 minutes after the trip was underway, after he left the house, he FaceTimes his mother, who is sleeping because she has been studying for the state boards for her pharmacy exam. But she, he FaceTimes her. She doesn't answer. And then he actually texts her, and the text just reads in simple, "Help me." He goes on to try to call his mother's sister. He goes on to try and call his grandfather, which would be his paternal grandfather, his father's father, who lives there in Florida, and no one answered. Now, according to the cousins that were on the trip, they began to smoke marijuana in this car that they were traveling in. They said that Giovanni started panicking, started freaking out, that he had then pulled a knife out on them, and then they said he ran off. He started panicking and he just ran off, and that they don't know what happened to him. Now, this all sounded very suspicious. The mother, which her name is Bridget went ahead and put out this information, missing persons. She got with an organization that would help her, because she said because Giovanni was 18, she didn't feel that people were really taking this very seriously. So there were no Amber Alerts that went out or anything like that, because he was not a minor. When they started looking for Giovanni in the last place in which the family said that they had saw him, that's when I think about 10 days later, so over the weekend, believe on the 9th, that is when they found a body in a shallow pond area. Now they said the body is so badly decomposed that they're not really able to identify him the way in which, like, a for sure official identification, but they do believe that the body that they found near this pond is in fact Giovanni's body. They have been, sort of, trying to really put together what actually happened in this situation, but they've not been able to really tell exactly what went down. Now the mother who is Bridget really feels that the cousins know more than they're saying. She's saying that, there is no way. This is a picture of Giovanni, his mother, and his mother's fiance, Mr. Brown. She's saying that there is no way that Giovanni ran off. She thinks that there's something more going on here. Now, they say that upon inspection of the body, for what they can see, even though that the body is badly decomposed, they say that the body is actually shows no signs of foul play. So there are no, obvious ligature marks. These are things that the coroner would be looking for when they found a body, whether it's decomposing or not. And 10 days in the water, 8 or 9 days rather in the water could make it so that it would be badly composed. But they said that there's no obvious signs of trauma. So no ligature marks, no, for instance, bullet holes, no cut marks. Since there was a mention of a knife on the premises, there are no slicing marks on his body, nothing like that. They said that the whatever the cause of death is likely going to come out in the toxicology reports. And as you know, and I can tell you from working in law enforcement, being at the district attorney's office for as long as I was, the toxicology reports take a little bit of time. They can take between 6 and 8 weeks to get those results back. So they're going to be waiting to see what the toxicology reports yield. Now, I am of the mind of Miss Pelletier. I think the same as Miss Bridget here. I think that there was something foul going on that the cousins are not saying. Perhaps they didn't do anything wrong. They said that they were smoking marijuana, but perhaps there was some other illegal substance that was laced in the marijuana, or perhaps they weren't doing marijuana, but it was some other illegal substance that, Giovanni's body could not handle. Perhaps it was an accident. Perhaps he OD'd and they didn't know how to revive him. And so because they were scared, because they didn't know what to do, they left him in that area, or they came up with a plan to leave him there. Now, you may be wondering, if that happened, are there criminal charges that they would face? Well, yes, there's, negligence, negligent homicide, is one of the possibilities, depending on what the whole story is. Of course, I'm not throwing that out there as being that's what it is, but I'm saying that is a possibility in the ethers if something like that happened, or it could be just, negligence just in general. I don't know what that would be, assuming that, what they were actually smoking was marijuana. It wasn't laced with anything. It could have been something else. We don't know, but definitely the authorities are saying the toxicology the reports will let us know. Now, listen, drugs are a funny thing in general. I don't obviously recommend anyone try any drug for that matter, because you just never know what you're getting. But people right now who are buying cocaine and things of that nature. I think of Michael K. Smith, who unfortunately a talented actor, but unfortunately OD'd on cocaine. But it was really because it wasn't cocaine, it was fentanyl. It was a fentanyl overdose. So if you are somebody who is buying cocaine from someone, and a lot of it on the street is stepped on with fentanyl, and it's very possible that this could have affected him, Giovanni, in that way. Just getting fentanyl on your hands can be lethal depending on who the person is. Also, as it relates to cocaine, even if it was just straight cocaine, that could have also, make someone OD, because it depends on your individual body structure. The same amount of cocaine consumption that one might take is not going to, affect me in the same way. So Giovanni could have had an issue where his heart maybe could not take that. We don't know. So we're going to find out with these toxicology reports. And when they say no foul play, the police is saying no foul play as it relates to violence, right? But if, let's just say, there was something going on with there being an OD situation, they would say death by overdose. And or if, it affected him in a way where he, it made him have a heart attack even. That would not be in the foul play scenario. That would be in the overdose scenario. So we're gonna have to wait to see what's going on. But another thing I wanted to sort of point out about Giovanni, and I wasn't sure if his mother wanted to be forthcoming with that, but some of the photos that I saw of Giovanni sort of, made me think that he possibly was a kid who had, he was a loving kid. Of course, we know that he was a loving kid, but he was a kid who maybe had some. Issues of his own. We don't know if that was the case. Miss Bridget hasn't come back and said anything like that. But when I saw the photos of him, and this is not negative, this is just kind of how I was looking at it. I saw him as potentially being somebody who was, uh-oh, sorry guys, I don't know why I did that. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll have to get it back later. But potentially as a kid who maybe had some issues of his own, where they talked about where his cousins talked about him sort of freaking out and things of that nature. I was like, I wonder if he has some sort of ADHD. Is he on the spectrum? Because some people who have these sorts of conditions, if they're taking substances or even if they're around certain things that could, heighten their sensibilities, they can react in adverse ways. And so I wondered about that as I read the accounts of the cousins saying that he started to panic, he started to freak out, and he, pulled a knife out and things of that nature. I wanted to show this photo of Giovanni here. The area that you're looking at right here is the area actually where they found his remains, or what we believe to be Giovanni's remains, since we won't have a complete confirmation of identity until, I don't know, dental records come into play or something. But just seeing him, they said they just seeing the body, they actually weren't able to positively identify him due to the advanced composition of the body. He went missing on the 1st. They didn't find him until the 9th or 10th. So that's about 9 to 10 days in that pond. And many things could have happened. So you see here, this is the area where they have this tent. This is likely where the body was, put here so that they could look at the bodies. This is usually what they do when they find bodies. They put a tent over it. Certain crime scenes. And so it's just really just a sad thing, but I wanted to update you guys on that. We'll continue to keep you on the post there. And everything else going on as it relates to Sean Combs, the pardon, the not pardon, the domestic abuse counselor situation, and of course any updates here with Giovanni. And we're also keeping a pulse on the Trevor Lee story to see if there's more that comes out of that situation as far as the charging, as far as details as to what actually happened. Trevor Lee, of course, is the young man who confessed to unaliving both his parents just last week, and then walking subsequently to the church where he was arrested by police some 30 minutes later. Okay, guys, that's it for Class in Court today. This has been your girl, Miss Public Info. Stay cool, stay calm, stay collected, and stay out of trouble. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.